Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Malaproprisms. These are one of my favorite literary devices, and we're going to talk about them in terms both of what they are and of why, as a writer, you might use them, particularly in creative writing. In scholarly writing, there's less of a place, really, for Malaproprisms, but depending on how clever a scholarly writer you are, there are still ways that you can incorporate them. So, what is a malapropism? Basically, it is where you either mess up a recognizable phrase or alter a word by replacing it with a word that sounds similar. So there's a couple of major variations of this, but basically, in some way, it's an error. So I'll give you a couple of examples, and that'll help sort of illustrate this. And I'm pulling these examples from Terry Deary's Horrible Histories book, Wicked Words, which has a section on malapropisms. So, for example, parent writing a sick letter for their child. Dear sir, please excuse Michael, who was absent with a sore trout, rather than throat. Writing a letter of recommendation. James is one of a rare breed instead of rare breed. History essay. Joan of Arc was burned as a stake, and many people died from the Many people died from the blue bonnet plague. So these kinds of things. Again, and we see this all the time. People do this in comedy, people do this in real life because they just make errors or associations of sound, things like this. So one variation of the malapropism is put in a word that sounds similar but has a completely different meaning. The other variation of a malapropism is to alter something like a proverb, some recognizable phrase or a cliche, something like this. And this is often the more effective, maybe sort of comically recognizable version of this. The first person who jumps into my head as doing this sort of systematically is the bartender from the film Boondock Saints, right? He uses all of these proverbs, but he sort of mixes and matches them, right? None of his proverbs are correct, but he jams bits and pieces together. Another sort of famous variation of this that's played for comic effect, but not really a pleasant comic effect, is Biff in Back to the Future. His famous malapropism being "make like a tree and get out of here," right? It's supposed to be "make like a tree and leave," or "leaf," right? This is the joke of it, but the fact that he doesn't understand that, it becomes this sort of ironic commentary on his cognitive abilities. These kinds of malapropisms open great doors for comic effect, right? As a writer, you can use these variations on recognizable phrases to create irony or to build character. So one of the most common malapropisms, I'd say one of the most famous, based on just how much I've heard it, is "we'll burn that bridge when we come to it," right? And this is a combination of "cross that bridge when we come to it," which is a famous saying, along with "burning one's bridges," another famous cliche. You jam them together and they mean something quite different, right? Because "we'll cross that bridge when we come to it" means that is a problem that we're going to deal with when it becomes an immediate issue. "Burning one's bridges" refers to ending relationships that one no longer wants. You jam them together, and suddenly you have a phrase that on its surface doesn't make sense, and this is where the source of humor comes from. I think my dad's favorite malapropism was you can lead a mouse to cookies, but you can't make him drink, which combines you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink with if you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to want a glass of milk. My favorite is that's a different kettle of horses, which combines that's a different kettle of fish with a horse of a different color. So again, it's all about sort of jamming things together, and malapropisms are really about associations. They're about associations of sound when you're talking about a sore trout rather than a sore throat, of a different bread rather than of a different breed, or associations of ideas, associations of proverbs, cliches, whatever it is, when you're jamming different things together. And again, often as a writer, this can be used for comic effect. You can indicate that a character is not particularly bright. You can challenge the audience, challenge the reader's sort of views, perspectives on particular phrases and ideas, etc., by turning them, by making them strange, right? Because a phrase like, that's a different kettle of fish, it's fine, it's a cliche, and cliches aren't great, but when it becomes that's a different kettle of horses, the audience's ears are going to prick up, or their eyes are going to prick up if they're reading. That's not really a thing, but their brain is going to start working in a way that it doesn't work, that it doesn't have to work when you have just a cliche or a proverb, because that's something recognizable. But when you take something and make it strange, make it different from what one would expect, the audience, the reader, whatever it is, has to pay more attention to it. And this has a long history in comedy. Shakespeare has a character named Dogberry who does this. But the term malapropism actually comes from 1775 from Richard Brinsley Sheridan's play The Rivals, where he has a character named Mrs. Malaprop. And this is what she does. She messes up phrases, she inserts the wrong word because it sounds similar, etc. And this was such a distinctive element of her character that she ended up lending her name to the technique. So, yeah, this is the kind of thing that if you are a writer, especially a creative writer, you can incorporate malapropisms for comic effect, but also to engage the audience in sort of thinking further about what's going on, because it takes something that we might otherwise easily recognize and blow past without thinking about, and forces us to consider what's going on linguistically.